Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russian forces of committing genocide in towns near the capital, Kyiv. He described the war as the torture of an entire nation. There's been condemnation of Russia from leaders around the world, including the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. But the Kremlin is continuing its offensive in the east of Ukraine. Simon Jones has the latest.
The withdrawal of Russian forces from areas around Kyiv reveals the destruction and a mounting death toll. More than 400 bodies have been recovered in the region, according to Ukraine's Prosecutor General. Civilians apparently indiscriminately killed in the street by retreating Russian soldiers. Residents of the city of Bucha have witnessed unimaginable horror.
I'm so worried. I'm already 90. I shouldn't have lived to see this.
These satellite images from Bucha are said to show evidence of a mass grave in the grounds of a church. It's a bleak landscape. Boris Johnson says Russia's despicable attacks against innocent civilians are yet more evidence that President Putin and his army are committing war crimes.
Very strong words from Mr. Zelensky overnight, accusing Russian forces of a deliberate massacre of civilians in these towns around the capital, Kyiv. And
Moscow says that all of those reports, all of those images, all of that footage are all fake news. They've accused the Ukrainians of having staged the scenes that you've seen broadcast from Bucha. And the Ministry of Defence has said not a single local resident of Bucha suffered from any violent action. On the contrary, its troops, it said, have taken humanitarian aid to the settlements all around that area. And not only is Moscow accusing Ukraine of staging fake news, it's demanding a meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss what's happened. It says that Ukraine has perpetrated a blatant provocation designed to escalate tensions and to disturb peace talks. Peace talks, of course, which are due to resume in an online format later today.
Well, we end this half hour with a BBC investigation which has found clear evidence that a cluster bomb, banned by many countries under international law, was used in an attack on Kramatorsk railway station. More than 50 people died in that blast, many of them women and children. Here is the BBC's Joe Inwood.
Boris Johnson says Russia's despicable attacks against innocent civilians are yet more evidence that President Putin and his army are committing war crimes.
Very strong words from Mr. Zelensky overnight, accusing Russian forces of a deliberate massacre of civilians in these towns around the capital, Kyiv. And
civilians apparently indiscriminately killed in the street by retreating Russian soldiers. Boris Johnson says Russia's despicable attacks against innocent civilians are yet more evidence that President Putin and his army are committing war crimes.
Very strong words from Mr. Zelensky overnight, accusing Russian forces of a deliberate massacre of civilians in these towns around the capital, Kyiv. And
civilians apparently indiscriminately killed in the street by retreating Russian soldiers.
A tragedy unfolded, one that history claims as one of the bloodiest and darkest days of the Indian struggle for independence, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. In April 1919, the British government was at the pinnacle of its rule. Tension was brewing in the city of Amritsar, Punjab, amid riots and protests against the tyranny of the British and continuous retaliation by the British Raj. On 13th April 1919, Colonel Dyer received word of a protest meeting being organized at Jallianwala Bagh. He led his troops and stormed into the Bagh, armed with rifles, where about 20,000 unarmed people had gathered, some in protest of the Rowlatt Act and others in celebration of the festival of Baisakhi.
Boris Johnson says Russia's despicable attacks against innocent civilians are yet more evidence that President Putin and his army are committing war crimes.
Very strong words from Mr. Zelensky overnight, accusing Russian forces of a deliberate massacre of civilians in these towns around the capital, Kyiv. And
Civilians apparently indiscriminately killed in the street by retreating Russian soldiers. Boris Johnson says Russia's despicable attacks against innocent civilians are yet more evidence that President Putin and his army are committing war crimes.
Fire!
The pictures. They do not believe that the pictures of these kids are real. They think they are fabricated by the Ukrainians. But they are real. Veronica, Venushka, Sofia, Nastya, Makita, Alisa, Paulina, Sofia, Semyon, Stefan, Sasha, Kirill, Masha, Milana, and so many others whose names we don't know.
You saw these pictures, you saw these videos, and we see that Russian army, they are not human. I don't know who they are. Are they animals? Are they orcs? Or who they are? I don't know. How it's possible to do this, I cannot even imagine.
And friends of Ukraine in the world who can join this work and help establish justice to do so. The world has already seen many war crimes at different times on different continents, but it is time to do everything possible to make the war crimes of the Russian military the last manifestation of such evil on earth.